Lizzie, confirm when we're live.
Thank you, Chair. The meeting is now live.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded. Should we have any technical issues, please bear with us. My first duty is to welcome Andrew Cardozo and his team from KPMG, who are with us this evening. Would the members of the team just very briefly like to introduce yourselves before we begin the meeting?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Andrew Cardozo. I'm the director from KPMG. So we're your new auditors from 23-24, taking over from EY when they complete their audits. So with me today, I've got Jess and Adam, who will introduce themselves. Just a brief thing about KPMG so that you have some comfort that we know what we're going to be doing when we do take over your audit. So I've been doing external audit of local government for 25 years. I've been at KPMG for that long. And as part of that, I've audited Northamptonshire County, Northampton Borough, Sandwell, Solihull, Wolverhampton, Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. So quite a lot of experience of dealing with quite big authorities like yourselves with all of the services that you do as well. So hopefully bring that experience and knowledge here as part of that audit and especially working with Stuart and his team in terms of actually challenging and making sure it's a robust audit. So looking forward to working with you. Locally, we have 120 in our public sector focused audit team, and nationally there's 400 people that are public sector focused, part of the bigger 17,000 that work for KPMG, but 400 that are purely focused on local government and public sector audit. So then I'll let Jess introduce herself, who's the in charge on the audit.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica Thompson. I'm the in charge on the audit, as Andy said. I've been at KPMG for 2.5 years now. So I'm fairly new to local government, but I work on other public sector audits, so healthcare, education, housing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you all as well and hopefully speak to you soon.
And I'm Adam Bunting. I'm the manager on the audit. I've been in KPMG a bit less than Andy, about 15, 16 years now, and work on the government over that time as well. So working with councils like Wiltshire Council, Telford and Wrekin Council, and Sandwell Council as well.
Excellent, thank you very much for the introduction. Moving on now to the formal agenda, agenda item 1. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, I've had apologies from Councillor Karim. I also note that we have Councillors Hafferty and Neil attending on YouTube. Is that correct? Would you mind confirming?
Yep, I'm here. Adrian Hafferty.
Thank you. Councillor Neil, are you there?
Councillor Neil, present.
Thank you. I think that's everyone, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any councillor have any disclosable pecuniary or affected interest to declare? Okay, that's none noted. Item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? No, I'll take there. It's an accurate set of minutes. So I'm happy to move that we approve the minutes. Is that seconded by anyone? Thank you, Councillor. Alan? Okay, all those in favour? That's unanimous to me. Thank you very much. Item 4. Any urgent items of business?
No, none notified, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the first substantive issue on the item, which is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, which is given on page 8 of the agenda. And it's going to be presented by Calvin Orr, who is joining us online.
Good evening, Chair. So this is the annual Treasury Management Report that comes every year to this committee. It has a twofold purpose. One is a mid-year update or a review of progress to date, and that looks at our borrowing and our investments and whether anything dramatically has changed from where we set out in the budget. But the more substantive element is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement that was provided to the Executive in December and sets out our policies and guidelines for the forthcoming financial year 2024-25. The Governance and Audit Committee has a purpose of reviewing and examining these policies, so a sort of a scrutiny rule, and the recommendation is therefore to recommend the report for its approval by Council. I'm not going to say a huge amount about the report. Obviously, the Treasury Management Strategy Report was published back in December. There are some complex prudential indicators and guidelines within that. Primarily, the mid-year review sets out a snapshot of where we are presently, and it offers us an opportunity to raise any issues that we may wish at this time of the year. I'm glad to say there's nothing I wish to raise in terms of our current performance. Focus is still very much on inflation within the economy, and we are hoping to see interest rates start to move down this coming year. The report sets out our current level of debt and investments, and I'm happy to take any questions on that. The Treasury Management Statement, as I said, is a more complex document. It sets out both our capital expenditure plans for the forthcoming year. It sets out some of our key policies, so our minimum revenue provision policy and our prudential indicators that we are required to present and approve, and also sets out some economic backdrop on our investment and borrowing strategy for the year ahead. There's no fundamental changes in the strategy for 24-25 compared to 23-24. We'll continue to invest and borrow in the same manner that we have done previously, and we'll just keep abreast of changes in economics and changes in any interest rates and how that may affect our decisions in terms of borrowing and investments. Just a final thing to say, we are expecting interest rates have peaked and should start to ease off during this year. As such, we will look to keep our borrowing short in terms of maturities. So we don't wish to lock in higher rates, and where possible, we'll look to lengthen our investment maturities. So again, the expectation of interest do fall off, where we have the opportunity to do so, we'll try and lock in these higher rates. Happy to take any questions on the report. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. So, councillors, do you have any questions?
Through you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Zaruddin.
Page 18, table net financing need for the year 2024-25 shows 5.5 million. But in page 17, net financing need table for the same year 2024-25 says 3.12 million approximately. So could you please clarify, is it the way we're seeing these numbers, or is it something?
So I think the reason why there is this slight difference, Councillor, is that we have a one-off capital receipt that is coming in at the tail end of this year, and that we will be applying to our capital programme. And I think that explains the different in values between the two tables. So it's a one-off, and we wouldn't normally show it that way, but we're presenting it this way this year.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, can I ask another question?
Yeah, please do.
Page 22, table operational boundary got 2024-25 estimate column repeated. So was it intended, or is it a typo? Can that be confirmed, please?
No, that's not a typo. We confirm that our operational boundary should remain constant. So we're not planning on taking on any significant. Although there's an error in the title of the column heading, but in terms of our operational boundary levels, they won't change because we're not expecting to take on any significant level of borrowing above where we have been.
Yeah, can that be corrected?
It can be, yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Councillor Haverty.
Oh, okay. This is probably a bit of a high-level question, but when I was looking through the Treasury Management reports, I noticed there wasn't that much information about the ethics of some of our investments. I was just wondering if we have an ethical investment policy or similar, and if so, if we have any sort of high-level details on it or information as to where it can be found. Thanks.
We don't as such have an ethical investment policy. All our investments are held in money market funds. So they are large groups of funds that are AAA rated. We are limited to the type of funds that we can invest in. So as a local authority with not a lot of money, we have limited vehicles that we can place money with. I guess the alternative is with other local authorities or with our current bank. I said most of our money market funds tend to hold gilts, so government debt, because we operate with very low risk money market funds, so they won't be investing in primarily company debt. It's nearly all security backed government debt. But I'm more than happy to share the details. What we can get from each of our money market fund providers is where they invest, what investments they hold. But primarily, we haven't been an organisation we don't invest in companies at all, so we don't invest in oil or things like that. We're very limited to where we can invest. But I'm more than happy to give a breakdown of the type of holdings that each of our money market funds will hold. Clearly, they all have their own ethical standards in terms of where they invest their money, and they all have policy statements on that. And so I'm more than willing to share them with the committee as well.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, Calvin. So within so as you know, we're within the sort of a budget setting process at the moment, and there's a statement here about we have to have a balanced budget. Is there just a general question? To what extent does Treasury Management contribute to the overall budget outcome for the council?
Okay. I guess a number of ways. Historically, we used to have considerable level of investments, and that would generate significant levels of income. I mean, previously years we would maybe generate £1 or £2 million of investment income, and clearly that would go straight in to support the revenue budget. We're moving. I guess we've had two different changes in the last couple of years. One, we've gone through a very low interest rate environment, so for many months receiving little or no interest, which obviously would have an impact on our general fund revenue count. But we're also moving into a much more debt orientated strategy, where we've used all our available balances in previous years, and so we are moving now into a borrowing position. But clearly, you know, every pound that we have to borrow has a revenue cost, so that's why we look to manage our treasury function in the most optimum way, making sure we use all our internal balances first, because therefore we don't have to pay debt on them, and where we do invest to make sure we're following the security yield and liquidity. But yeah, there is, with interest rates of 5%, clearly any capital expenditure that is unfinanced, i.e. not funded from capital receipts, has to be borrowed, and whether that be internally or externally, that has a cost.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can ask just a supplementary arising. So we all know that interest rates went up substantially last 12 months or so. What effect did that have on council's expenditure and revenue in respect to Treasury?
There will be a short-term impact in the current year. Clearly, I mean, the mid-year update highlights the level of short-term borrowing that we have this current year. If we looked at the position last year, we would have been borrowing at about 2% on those monies. This year, we're borrowing at 5%, so there's an increase of about 3%. So that has an impact. However, our net position hasn't changed dramatically. So the cost of carry, as we call it, the difference between what we're borrowing and what we're investing is relatively small at the minute. We still expect this year to be able to come in within budget on our interest budget. And again, that's largely a result of the higher interest rates that we've had at the beginning of the year when our cash flow is at its most healthiest. So again, the last 3 months of the year, I think as I explained in the report, is when we as an authority pay out our money and don't get any money in either from business rates, council tax, or the government historically. So we have been making money on the investments in the first 8 months of the year, and that will help support us make sure that we bring forward a balanced interest budget for this year. But clearly the risk is, should interest rates not fall in the future months, and we have to refinance some of our borrowing at these higher rates, then that will impact on the general revenue account.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, I can see no further questions. So we're going to, I'm going to move that, go through the recommendations and get a seconder, and then we can have a debate. So the recommendations are on page 7. 2.1. The committee consider and review the mid-year review report. That the committee agree that the mid-year review report be circulated to all members of the council. That the committee review the Treasury Management Report in Annex A for 24-25 prior to its approval by full council. So they're recommendations. I propose those, and they've been seconded by Councillor Jazz. And we move to debate. Anybody would like to speak in the debate? No. We have no speakers for the debate. So I'm assuming that we're happy with this report. So I'm formally going to propose that we vote on the recommendations. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That looks unanimous to me. Thank you. Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we're going to move to agenda item 6, which is the internal audit update presented by Sally Hendricks. Sally, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is my interim report. I produce a report for every meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee, which sets out the progress that we're making against the audit plan that was approved. So this is reporting against the progress against the audit plan that was approved by the Governance and Audit Committee in March 2023. So first of all, I'd really like to start by drawing your attention to one of the key points I want to get across today, which is on page 36 and also on page 39, where I'm making specific reference to the difficulties we are having in resourcing at the moment, which is having a knock-on effect for the delivery against the audit plan. And this is largely due to the vacancy that we have at the principal auditor level and the difficulty we have in recruiting. So at the moment we are quite heavily dependent on 2 apprentices to deliver a lot of the field work, who require quite a lot of close supervision and training, and who also only work 4 days a week because they have 1-day training. So we are under quite a lot of pressure resource-wise to try and deliver the audits. We have mitigated against that to some extent by buying additional days from Wokingham Council's Internal Audit Service. They would normally provide us with about 100 days a year, and this year they're providing us with 150, which is the maximum they have in terms of their capacity to assist us. So they are providing us with additional support to try and help us through this, but it is putting quite a lot of pressure on our delivery, and this is having a sort of knock-on effect in terms of the speed at which we're able to get through the plan. And you'll see if we move on to the more detail on the report on page 41, where I've set out here what we have delivered to date against the audit plan. So in summary, whereas by this time last year we would have delivered 29 audits, we've only delivered 21 audits to date. What I would say is I've got another couple of audits that we have actually issued since I wrote this report. So we have another couple that have gone out, which both have satisfactory assurance opinions on them. So we're up to about 23 at the moment, but it is a struggle really for us to actually get through the work. We've also taken steps to review the audit plan, particularly in the people area where we had a quite overly ambitious plan, I think we should say really, for 23-24. And we've reviewed that to look at the high priority ones and look to see which ones we could defer into the next year. So some of those will move into 24-25, and that's set out in the detailed appendix 1 at the back of the report. But as I said, we have got 21 reports that we have got out, 21 audits, grants as well, within the programme that we've delivered to date. So moving on to section 3.7 on page 41, I'm drawing your attention here to those audits which have been issued with a high priority points raised in them since I provided my last update to the Audit Committee back in September. So we have another 3 areas where we're drawing attention to here. The first one being budgeting, where we produced an advisory memo and raised 4 major risk observation areas as set out here in the detail. In addition to that, we've carried out an audit at the Larchwood Centre, which is a children's respite centre, and raised 5 major recommendations at that particular audit as well. The third one that we have, we actually did give a satisfactory assurance opinion, but we did raise 1 major recommendation, and this was in relation to the Amazon account, and that relates to the need to ensure that the current staff in the procurement team get a greater understanding of how the Amazon account works, because the Amazon account was initially set up by the procurement team who were in place at the time, and all of those staff have since left. So we're with an entirely new team basically in procurement, and there is a need, or there was a need at the time of the audit, to build up greater knowledge of how the Amazon account worked. So those are the key points that we've got for the council, those 3 areas. In addition, we have 3 school audits that we've carried out, where we have raised these reports for the governing bodies of those schools, where we have identified some key issues as well. And as I've probably mentioned to you in previous updates that I've given, it's important to bear in mind that we have a process whereby we do not go out and visit every school. We ask each school to carry out a detailed self-assessment on their governance and financial arrangements once every 3 years, and from that we review their self-assessment, and then we decide whether we think there may be some weaknesses that we need to look at more closely, and then we go out to audit them. So it's probably only to be expected that the schools that we do go out to actually visit will come up with probably poorer assurance opinions, because they are already identified as having potential weaknesses from the self-assessment process itself. In addition to that, I did want to also draw your attention to the update on audit recommendations, which is set out on in Appendix 2 at the back of the report. This is where we ask managers to provide an update in the recommendation tracker in response to the recommendations that have been raised in audit reports, and to give a sort of position statement. So you can see from this the sort of latest position on that and which ones are outstanding. Following on from this, I have got further updates from one of the directorates. So in the sort of PPR area, we do have another couple where I think they're pretty much cleared now. So I think the only one where we haven't really had any further update is building control and land charges. So that sort of summarises broadly where we are on the audit. As I said, the key concern I have is around our level of resourcing and the difficulties we have in trying to deliver audits with the limited resources that we actually have. And that also has a knock-on effect as well for risk management and the capacity I have to maintain the strategic risk register. So there are further implications beyond audit as well. That's all I was going to actually raise, but I'm very happy to take any questions that anybody has.
Councillor Allen.
A couple of points, Sally, if I might. Firstly, you mentioned that you got a couple of staff who were apprentices, and I think the apprenticeship started about a year ago, was it? So how long is the apprenticeship? Is it 2 years?
Yeah, it's roughly 20 months.
Right. Okay.
Roughly 20 months.
So there is a light at the end of the tunnel somewhere.
Yeah, there is a light in the end of the tunnel. They are very, very good. It has to be said, they are doing very well, but they still require a level of supervision that it takes myself and the deputy away from doing audits. And at the moment, whereas normally I wouldn't be doing a lot of audit work, I'm having to do a lot of audit work to help get us through the plan because we have a vacancy at the principal auditor level. So if you think about it, this time last year we would have had somebody, I think an agency worker that would have been working at the principal auditor level. We don't have that. So we're missing quite a big gap in an experienced qualified auditor to try and get us through the plan. We did have an agency principal auditor with us until around last September, but they left at that point and they haven't been replaced.
Okay. And the second comment I've got is on School E on page 42, you say no opinion. That's not quite the same as no assurance, is it? So what exactly are you trying to say there?
With this particular audit, the head teacher acknowledged before we even agreed the timing of the audit that she knew there were significant difficulties with the school. So we took the decision to carry out the audit more as a gap analysis. And when we went out, we did find a significant number of problems. So we didn't give an opinion, but we did give a gap analysis, really. That's really how we've worked the audit in the end. But we did find a significant number of issues at the audit. It really does sort of equate to an audit. We did exactly the same audit work as we would have normally done. I think the head teacher would have been more resistant to having an audit done if I'd said I was going to carry out an audit and put an assurance opinion on it. So sometimes we do get around that by saying, well, okay, we will do a gap analysis or so on. And as I said, when we did go out, we did find a lot of issues with that one.
So does that mean you'll be going back in, say, 6 months' time to make sure they fix all this stuff? Because presumably that school needs a lot of work.
It certainly does. It certainly does. We will always return to schools within 12 months to go back to check them. Sometimes they need longer than 6 months to turn everything around, but it does depend on whether schools academise in the intervening period. I can't quite remember if this one is. I don't think it's due to at the moment. So we will go back to check in the autumn, I would imagine, with this one because there were so many difficulties to see how they're progressing.
That would be a new one on me to actually academise to avoid an audit.
It's an extreme reaction.
Councillor Zaharuddin.
Through you, Chair. It's really nice to know that the two apprentices are doing good, and that naturally comes with some challenges in the sense like what's our plan for the retention, because usually good and experts tend to move on for various reasons. So is there anything anything that we are planning to mitigate by maybe adding more apprentices to kind of have that padding?
Well, at the moment, I would be keen to retain the apprentices after they complete their initial apprenticeship. So I'm exploring that with the head of HR at the moment as to what we can, how we can move that forward to provide a sort of career progression path for those apprentices that we've already invested a huge amount of time and effort in training. And having done that, we would want to retain them wherever possible, where they're doing well. We don't want to lose people where and then we're right back to the beginning. So one of the reasons why we took on the apprentices in the first place was because of the general difficulty in recruiting auditors. So we were advised when we had our external assessment from SIPFA that taking on apprentices might be a good way forward to try and address potential resourcing shortages. And that's why we went down that route initially. But having gone down that route, you really want to try and retain them, which is why we're exploring the options and looking at the career progression path and suitable grading moving forward to try to retain those apprentices that we've already invested in and are already training.
Just to follow up on that, I think what I meant was the retention from the opposite side. So yeah, I appreciate, we will definitely want to retain them, but the motivation on the other side, would they want to continue is a question. So if they don't, then what sort of backup plan we have, like from the other side?
I think it's going to be a difficult one because we're already struggling to recruit the permanent staff at principal auditor level. If we didn't have the apprentices, then I would see no option, if we're unable to recruit, of going down the route of taking on agency staff, because I don't think there's any other option. I can't buy any more days from Wokingham. They don't have the capacity to do so. And I certainly really don't want to go down the route of getting agency staff, because that isn't ideal either. It costs an awful lot of money, and the quality of what you get can be variable, to be honest. So we want to try and avoid that route. So what we are trying to do at the moment is work with HR to get a more realistic evaluation of the principal auditor post, so that we stand a better chance of being able to recruit to that post, because a lot of the issues are down to the salary that we're offering, in my view.
Final one on the topic. So is there any reason why we can't add more apprentices like we did some time back, which is now proving to be very, very fruitful, to have that as some sort of a padding?
I would prefer not to take any further new apprentices on, because it's a huge amount of work, and if we're already struggling resource-wise, I would probably be reluctant to go down the route of taking on apprentices and starting all over again with that. If the existing apprentices were to go, I certainly would not take on two, and that was we when we interviewed, we were initially going to go for one. We had some really, really good candidates, and we couldn't really decide between the two. And we took two on, and I think on reflection, that was a bit too challenging, really, because they do require an awful lot of training and supervision. And when we have a very small team, there's only Michelle and I, my deputy and I, and half my time is on risk management. It's really quite a lot of pressure on us, and it reduces what else we can deliver.
Thank you. I have a question.
Hey, Councillor Jazz.
Thank you. So what is the quality of these internees who are interning with us, and can we have faith or trust that they will, with the 1 year of apprenticeship, they will come up to scratch and do the job that they are, trained to do? Also, why are we not paying compatible salaries within Bracknell Borough Council, so that we can attract more qualified people to these roles? Thank you.
I think with the apprentices, as I said, we're supervising them quite closely to make sure the quality of the work is there. They are both doing very well, and I'm happy with the standard of work. But audit is a complex thing, and at the moment, whereas we could get them to do the simpler audits on their own, the more complicated audits they still require supervision on. And every time, it isn't... There are some, say for example, we have finance apprentices, they're probably doing, to a certain extent, repetitive tasks every month. with audit, every time they start an audit, it's an entirely new process. It's an entirely new set of procedures and things they're looking at and auditing. So it takes them a while to sort of learn how to approach audit work, and they are coming on very well, but they still require quite a lot of supervision. They've only been here just a year, and as I said, they are doing very well.
Just add to my question. Supply staff always costs far more than the employed people. So why don't we invest in retaining people and employing them at a better pay packages than having to spend extra money on supply staff?
I entirely agree with you. It doesn't make sense. It seems to largely come down to the job evaluation model that the council follows. And whenever we put forward cases for review, for job assessments, and we put them through at a certain level, they get knocked down. And that means then that the salaries we're offering are coming in lower than the competitive rate. So it is a bit of a battle, really, to try and actually get a reasonable salary agreed that will enable us to be competitive in the market when we go out to advertise.
Thank you. Is there then a case for you to maybe, for this council, to look at the job remit and all that, so that we can look at it where we are lacking and why we are not attracting and why the pay packages are low?
I can only really speak from an audit point of view, really, and I am working with HR on that, with the individual jobs that I'm putting forward. It's quite hard for me to comment on anything else, but it's certainly the job evaluation model is not working for audit, basically, in terms of the assessment. Whatever the factors they are looking for, they don't seem to consider, I don't know, professional judgments. I'm not quite sure what their job evaluation model is and how it works, but it's a bit of it's an uphill struggle, I would say. And I would say, actually, when we go around doing our audit work, it would appear that I'm not the only one that's in that position. I'm not the only manager that's actually struggling to get reasonable, competitive salary rates agreed for the posts we want to advertise. And I have had to spend considerable amount on agency staff, which, as I said earlier, don't necessarily do a great job. And what we really want is to actually be able to advertise a job at a reasonable, competitive salary rate so we can get permanent staff in.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Sally. I think everybody on the committee would join with me in thank you very much for the work that you're doing with the apprentices. We seem to be. Stuart one's going to come in. I'm going to just introduce Stuart into this, but just summarising so far, we have a kind of a false economy situation here where we're spending money on agency staff, and we seem to be in a bit of a deadly embrace with the job evaluation. So I'm going to ask Stuart to come in and comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. The job evaluation scheme has always had a struggle with assessing professional staff. The things that it values are things like management experience, and the reality is, if you look at salary team, it's very, very small. So therefore, there isn't an awful lot of scope to put management experience within any of the roles. But it's not alone across the council, and it's not necessarily just a challenge that we face with the evaluation scheme. Just to be clear, we do need to be very careful about the approach to that, because it is a defence against equal pay. And for those of you who follow local government will know that one of the key reasons why Birmingham City Council went into the terrible financial mess it's in is because of equal pay issues. So it's something which you approach very, very cautiously if you're going to change your job evaluation scheme. Doesn't mean we can't look at that, but we just need to be very careful about it. But there is a wider point about the market at the moment is just really challenging. That's why we have, as part of our business change programme, a programme specifically to look at recruitment retention. It's an issue across not just Bracknell Forest, it's an issue across all of Berkshire, it's an issue nationally that there are just not the same number of candidates looking for roles as were previously. In that situation, then the candidates who are there can ask for an awful lot more money than would be reasonable. And we do have an issue, and Sally will be aware of this, that procurement is another area where it's been a real struggle. So our head of procurement has done... It would be a disservice to say he's done little else other than try and recruit since he joined us about 15 months ago, but a key focus in his last 15 months has been to try and recruit. And 3 times he has got a candidate with an offer in place. 3 times they have pulled out because they used that to get a better job offer somewhere else. So that's the reality of what we're facing. It's very much a candidate market for now. There are issues, and Sally, I don't disagree with what Sally said around the evaluation scheme struggles. But even if we were able to get the salary at a higher level, which I think we're getting close to being able to do, Sally, eventually, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get the right candidates to come forward, because it is a very difficult market.
Thank you, Stuart. Any further questions on the report? So I have a question on the advisory for budgeting, again within the context of our budget setting process. What's the potential impact on the accuracy of our budgets, our forecasts from those advisories, and what's the action plan?
Is that something you want to respond to, Stuart? Would that be better for you to respond to how you're responding to the report?
Happy to do so.
Yeah, I think it might be more appropriate.
Yeah. The key issue that the audit report picked up on budgeting is not actually around the accuracy of the forecasting. It's really the fact that the finance team are the ones who are doing most of the forecasting on behalf of the managers within the organisation. And that's not the model that we should be having in place. You know, we do have budget managers who are responsible for the budgets, and we need to help them to take more responsibility for actually managing them day in, day out, rather than placing such a high level of reliance on the finance team, which is what has happened at the moment. So we are fairly accurate in terms of our budget projections. No organisation is ever completely accurate, but I don't think that's really the key issue. It's about the responsibility. So around that, the corporate management team did have quite a lengthy discussion around this audit report 2-3 weeks ago now, and there was no pushback. The corporate management team did agree that actually it is about helping the budget managers get to the point where they take the responsibility, and that will involve inevitably a bit of training, because some are better than others in terms of their skills and background, which they have inevitably. I don't think in overall terms it's a big cultural issue, because you know the reality is that we have demonstrated, I think, over the course of this financial year that we started off with a big challenge financially, but the organisation has responded to that very well. We're now down at a much lower overspend than we were in the summer last year. So I think the organisation culturally is financially aware and does respond well when asked to do so. It's just that basic budget management needs to be better by the budget holders themselves rather than the finance team. So that's about training. It's about making sure that they understand the budgets that they have and all the support that we can put around making sure they've got the simple tools to use. The Aggresso system is great for accountants. It's not necessarily so great for people who are not accountants by background. So a number of different things that we need to do in place of it, but just reassures here, it's not about the accuracy of the reporting.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Sally, any comment?
Yeah, I think Stuart's right, really. The level of engagement from budget holders isn't as it should be, really. But I think it is important. I think there are some things that maybe perhaps the finance team also need to work on as well to improve their processes, and I'm sure Stuart would agree with that. There's always room for improvement, really, to try and actually encourage that and improve the level of engagement and improve the level of training, and approach things in in a way that can get the budget holders to take greater ownership of their budgets. One of the things we're actually recommended was about getting budget holders to sign up to their budgets in a way that they don't actually do at the moment. And that is really, I suppose, gearing up to try and get budget holders to engage more in the budget setting process itself, because once they've done that, they're committing themselves to it in effect by saying, well, okay, we accept that this is the budget we as it should be. And I think that should sort of help really to get people to take greater ownership of the budget that is set in the first place, and then, as Stuart says, to get them to engage more with the forecasting during the year to provide more reliable figures for the council to be able to monitor the budget throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. KPMG, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure how to actually just raise my hand or shout up. Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, from our point of view, in terms of our VFM work that we'll be doing for 23-24, which we've shared a management questionnaire with Stuart and his team, we will absolutely be looking at budgeting and the arrangements that you have as a council to make sure that that's working effectively or not. And part of our conclusion and part of the work that Jess and Adam and the team will do is absolutely look at that and the ownership. And in terms of seeing the ability to deliver the budget at the end of the year does come down to people's ownership and engagement in the process from start to end. And secondly, just quickly, in terms of recruitment, it's something that is across the board in terms of qualified accountants are like trying to find hen's teeth at this moment in time across the country. We find it just as difficult. So when somebody like Jess is coming through the process and been with us for 2.5 years and will qualify with one more exam to go, then we will do everything that we can to keep her. But equally, it's we know that she'll be in huge demand from other firms and other organisations. So yeah, absolutely huge sympathy in terms of actually being able to find the right people and the right candidates across all of finance.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for that. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. The recommendation is for the committee to note the report. If no further questions, we'll take the report as read. Thank you. Okay, that was the last item on the agenda. So it just remains for me to thank everybody for attending. Thank you, fellow councillors, for assiduously reading the reports and your excellent questions. I think we've had a very good discussion of the reports that have been put before us this evening. So thank you again for that. And could the Democratic Services Office just confirm when the live broadcast has ended?